It only ran 65 laps. It didn't even finish a full day of testing. But what this machine just exposed in Barcelona has terrified the entire paddock. Because behind this car is the most feared mind in Formula One history, Adrian Newey. And for the first time ever, he's building a car for someone other than Red Bull. What we saw in Barcelona was not just testing, it was a message. And if what we're hearing is true, this season could be flipped upside down before it even starts. You do not want to miss what comes next. At first glance, the AMR26 looked like a failure. 5 laps. Then silence. While Red Bull completed over 300, and Ferrari finished more than 400, Aston Martin couldn't even finish one proper run. No long stints. No full speed data. No glory laps. Just a short rollout on Thursday night, followed by an immediate electrical failure. Most teams would panic. The headlines started writing themselves. Newey's debut ends in disaster. AMR26 breaks down in Barcelona. But something didn't add up. Because even though the car was parked in the garage, nobody in green looked worried. Not the engineers. Not the mechanics. Not Fernando Alonso. In fact, the mood inside the team was calm. Too calm. Here's where things get interesting. Aston Martin knew they were late. They knew they were pushing deadlines. They shipped the AMR26 straight from the factory floor to the test track. With no promotional shots. No launch video. No media hype. Why? Because they didn't want to reveal anything. Not yet. They were hiding something. This wasn't a public debut. It was a controlled leak. And once the cameras got close enough, what they saw shocked everyone. The car looked nothing like last year's AMR23. Gone were the Red Bull-style side pods. Gone were the high-floor tunnels. Instead, the AMR26 had been completely reimagined. Flattened side pods. A tighter engine cover. Rear suspension geometry that nobody could explain. A nose that flared outward, instead of tapering in. And the airflow behavior? Insane. Footage showed vortices forming near the rear wing in ways no other car displayed. Suddenly, the silence made sense. They didn't bring this car to win a test. They brought it to hide a weapon. But if they weren't chasing lap times, what exactly were they doing? On Friday, we got a clue. Fernando Alonso strapped in. And in a single session, he ran 61 laps. Not fast. Not impressive on the charts. But consistent. Clean. Methodical. Then, he got out of the car. And said just 3 words. It feels alive. That moment changed everything. Because Alonso is not known for flattery. He doesn't say things for PR. If the car was bad, he would have said so. Instead, he hinted at something far more dangerous. The AMR26 isn't just a car. It's a concept. A new interpretation of the 2026 regulations. And it's been built with one purpose only. To attack the limit. Even if it means risking everything. And that's what separates this story from every other team in Barcelona. While others were gathering safe data, Aston Martin brought a prototype that could either fail spectacularly, or break Formula One. But there's more. Because behind that quiet confidence is a name that still haunts the paddock. Adrian Newey. And his fingerprints are all over this machine. Adrian Newey doesn't build race cars. He builds weapons. And when he joins a team, he doesn't walk in with a smile and a laptop. He walks in with silence. And then, he starts sketching. For months, nobody at Aston Martin knew what he was working on. No CAD files. No data leaks. Just pages of hand-drawn lines. And airflow paths that made no sense to anyone else. Until the first carbon molds were cut, and the team finally saw what he had in mind. The AMR26 isn't just another Newey car. It's his first post-Red Bull creation. The first time in over a decade that he's been unleashed on a new project. Without corporate chains. Without restrictions. And it shows. What makes Newey so terrifying? It's not the speed. It's the delay. His cars never dominate testing. They don't need to. They hide their performance. They understeer in slow corners. They wobble on cold tires. They look beatable. Until race day. And then suddenly, the picture changes. He did it with the RB5. He did it with the RB18. And now, if Barcelona was any indication, he's doing it again. Here's where it gets really unsettling. Teams who analyzed the AMR26's airflow patterns say they've never seen anything like it. There's a subtle vortex forming under the rear suspension that appears to energize the lower beam wing. Something no other team has attempted. The design breaks convention. It ignores current simulation norms. And it shouldn't work. But somehow, it does. Wind tunnel whispers suggest that when this car hits a certain speed threshold, its aero profile shifts. It starts generating more downforce, not less. Almost like a switch flips. Think about that. A car that gets stronger as it gets faster. Now put that in the hands of Fernando Alonso, a man with 20 years of experience. A driver who can feel tire slip in the third decimal. And what did he say? It's alive. He wasn't joking. Insiders from the team confirmed that the car behaved differently. Above 220 kilometers per hour. It suddenly stabilized. The bouncing disappeared. The rear stopped stepping out. No setup changes. Just speed. That's not normal. And that's why Newey builds his cars like this. To confuse everyone. But it gets even better. Newey doesn't just design for performance. He designs for development. The AMR26, as strange as it already looks, is only in version 1. And here's the most dangerous detail of all. The car we saw in Barcelona was running with placeholders. Temporary floor. Simplified rear diffuser. No DRS calibration. Meaning, Aston Martin didn't bring their final package. They brought a test bed. And they still turned heads. So now the question is, if the prototype looked this radical, what does the real version look like? We'll find out in Bahrain. Because that's where they're planning the full reveal. But before that happens, there's something you need to know. Because during Alonso's run on Friday, a small piece of telemetry leaked. And what it shows changes everything. Friday afternoon. Barcelona. Final run of the day. Fernando Alonso pulls out of the garage for a quiet stint. No soft tires. No low fuel. No push lap. Just data gathering. Or so we thought. Because a few hours later, a screenshot appeared. Blurry. Cropped. But unmistakable. A piece of telemetry. One line. One figure. And it didn't come from Aston Martin. It came from a GPS tracking unit monitored by rival teams. Here's what it showed. Alonso hit 318 kilometers per hour. On the main straight. Let me repeat that. 318. In a car that was supposedly running limited power. With drag-heavy setup. And unfinished aero. That number? Is almost race-spec top speed. And it shouldn't have happened. So what does that mean? It means two things. First, the AMR26 is much more efficient than anyone thought. Because no team reaches that speed without burning through engine power or slicing off downforce. And yet, Alonso did. Quietly. No DRS. No tow. Just clean air? And raw, unexplainable speed. Second, Aston Martin was bluffing. They said they were collecting baseline data. They said they weren't chasing performance. But that one run? That was no data lap. That was a calibration test. A check to see how the car reacts. When pushed to the edge. Even for just one straight. And the result? Scared people. Here's the part nobody's saying out loud. If that car is already capable of hitting Grand Prix top speeds, with half its systems undeployed, what happens when they turn it all on? Because remember, this wasn't a full energy lap. This wasn't a quali sim. This was a check. A brief glimpse at what's under the hood. And that's exactly how Newey operates. He shows you just enough to make you guess. To make you doubt. To force you into overthinking. Because while you're second-guessing your setup, he's already moved on to the next upgrade. That's how Red Bull crushed the grid in 2022. And if what we saw in Barcelona is real, he's doing it again. But here's where it gets even more unsettling. The top speed wasn't even the most shocking number. Because deeper in the telemetry, one detail almost went unnoticed. A number that most fans ignore, but engineers never miss. Lift and coast. And Aston Martin was using a lot of it. Lift and coast is a driving technique to save fuel. You back off the throttle earlier into corners, then roll in gently. It kills lap time, but saves the engine. So if Alonso was lifting early, and still reaching 318, that's not just efficiency. That's a monster in disguise. A car that's being held back, deliberately, because it's not ready to show its full face yet. And that leads us to the real question. Because if this was only a data run, with no push settings, and the car still behaved like this, then what are they bringing to Bahrain? Because that could change everything. Everything about Aston Martin's Barcelona test felt off. The timing, the quiet garage, the limited laps. But now we know, it wasn't just strange. It was intentional. Because what Aston Martin didn't bring to Barcelona might be the key to everything. And no, we're not talking about soft tires. We're not talking about engine modes. We're talking about a physical part. Something that was meant to be on the car, but never arrived. The active rear beam wing. Here's what happened. Early CAD leaks from the AMR26 wind tunnel model showed a highly experimental concept. A new beam wing that could flex dynamically depending on the speed and yaw angle. In simple terms, a rear wing that adjusts itself in real time to boost straight-line speed and cornering grip. Some insiders even called it semi-active aero, a bridge between passive design and the active systems arriving in 2027. But in Barcelona, it wasn't there. The car ran a standard rear beam configuration. No dynamic surfaces, no flexing components. And yet, it still reached 318. So what does that tell us? Two things. First, the full version of this car, the Bahrain spec, doesn't exist yet in the public eye. We haven't seen it. Nobody has. Not even in spy photos. And second, Aston Martin ran this test with the brakes half on. By choice. Here's where the stakes get real. If that beam wing is legal, and the FIA hasn't banned it, then Aston Martin could be holding on to one of the cleverest tricks of the new aero era. Because rear beam wings are rarely the focus. Most teams use them for basic downforce balance. But Newey? He saw a gap in the rulebook. He found a shape that flexes just enough to change the car's balance through high-speed corners. And it's not speculation. Sources close to the team confirm that the upgraded beam wing is already built. It's in storage. It's waiting for Bahrain. And here's the best part. They're not even sure they'll show it in testing. They might wait until qualifying. Because if they reveal it too early, the other teams could file a protest, ask for a technical clarification, force a last-minute ban. But if they wait, if they unveil it on Saturday in Q1, there's nothing anyone can do. It's a classic Adrian Newey move. Delay, confuse, then strike. And if it works, Aston Martin could jump 2 tiers in one weekend. From midfield question mark to podium contender. And that's why Barcelona was never about lap times. It was about survival. They just needed the car to run, collect data, hide the real plan. Now that it survived, the gloves are off. But here's the twist. Even if the car is fast, even if the aero tricks are legal, it all depends on one man. Because at the center of this entire project, the man with the most to prove, is not Newey. It's Fernando Alonso. And what he decides to do in Bahrain might just break Formula One. Fernando Alonso is running out of time. 44 years old. 23 seasons in Formula One. Over 370 Grands Prix. And just 2 world titles. It's a career that should have produced 5. Maybe 6. Maybe more. But politics. Bad timing. Broken promises? They turned the best pound-for-pound driver of his generation into a legend with unfinished business. And now? He has one more shot. You could feel it in Barcelona. When he walked into the garage on Friday, he wasn't smiling. He wasn't laughing with mechanics. Wasn't doing interviews. He was quiet. Focused. And when he stepped into the AMR26 for the first time, there was no ceremony. No PR stunt. Just silence. Helmet on. Hands on the wheel. And eyes locked forward. Because Alonso knows something most drivers never admit. You don't get chances like this twice. Think about it. For the first time in his career, he's working with Adrian Newey, the designer responsible for more titles than any man in modern F1 history. And not just working with him, driving his newest, most radical creation. A car designed with only one driver in mind. No split priorities. No number 1 and number 2. Just Fernando. This isn't Mercedes, where team orders rule. This isn't Ferrari, where strategy implodes under pressure. This is Alonso, with full control. A clean slate. And a machine that, by all early signs, might be faster than anyone expected. But that makes the pressure even heavier. Because if this doesn't work, if this car fails, it's over. There's no next time. No, maybe next year. This is it. And here's the most dangerous part. Alonso knows it. He's not hiding it. He's embracing it. When asked if he was ready to fight for wins, he didn't dodge. He didn't give the usual PR line. He said, "If the car is fast, I'll do the rest." 6 words. No fluff. No fear. And that is terrifying. Because a hungry Alonso is one thing. A desperate Alonso? That's something else entirely. He'll risk more. He'll push harder. He'll go where younger drivers hesitate. And if the AMR26 gives him even a hint of an opportunity, he'll take it. No matter the cost. So now the question becomes, what does he do in Bahrain? Does he play it safe? Run simulations? Gather more data? Or does he go full attack? And send a warning to the entire grid? Sources inside Aston Martin suggest he's leaning toward the second option. They're preparing a soft tire run. Low fuel. Maximum power deployment. A full push lap. In front of the media. In front of Red Bull. In front of Mercedes. 1 lap. All or nothing. To show the world what this car can really do. To remind them that Fernando Alonso is not done yet. And to prove, finally, that he didn't waste his career. But there's one final twist. Because just as Alonso prepares to go to war, Red Bull is watching. Mercedes is calculating. Ferrari is listening. And they've all noticed the same thing. Aston Martin is too quiet. Which means, they're planning something big. And we're about to see what it is. In Bahrain.